Infinity War and subsequently Endgame undeniably worked because it was the culmination of 10 years of combined interconnected stories. Not all of which were perfect, but the majority remembered fondly. And even those respective Avengers movies weren't perfect either, yet they did the one thing that needed to happen, giving every single character at least one moment to shine, while still keeping the narrative's heart and soul focused on what truly mattered. And on the other hand, Doomsday and subsequently Secret Wars are seemingly not a culmination of everything that's happened in the multiverse saga, and thus I'm not sure if they can work as an effective finale or just as movies, not without making the past 6 years feel like wasted time. So today, along with eventually getting to the inseparable positives that a lot have been straight up ignoring, I want to air some of my grievances against this Venus flytrap of nostalgia that I'm still deciding is trying to honey trap me or not. Welcome back to Sandwich Reviews. I'm that sandwich guy, your nihilistic optimist, and obviously, with the teaser trailers we've gotten, the honey trap is more than apparent, but I'm not convinced the movie itself will have this much manufactured sentimentality, and I'll circle back around to that because it's the main takeaway I hope you walk away from this video with. But Doomsday itself and Secret Wars will, at the very least, be fun, and won't come off as the desperate grasp for relevance its teasers are making it out to be. Those teasers, along with Doomsday's whole marketing campaign, is the one that's desperate, sending out that last gasp attempt to, when the time comes, snatch your hard-earned money. All of which could be from the same group of dudes. We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, aside from the fact that its marketing campaign is one of the biggest Disney's ever had, so get ready for that ramp up in the coming year. But undeniably, Doomsday's advertisements have all been about one thing: nostalgia. And not even for times long gone. It's for characters and themes that we just got. I mean, more than half a decade has passed since we've last seen Steve Rogers, and that is a long time, but it just isn't enough to build the kind of anticipation that Doomsday's marketing team wants, feeding back into that feeling of desperation. But taking that idea a step further and reaching its natural endpoint, it's clear that nostalgia is all to push one supposed message: that Doomsday will be a return to form, bringing more of that good old MCU we all used to unanimously love. Except, aside from the fact that appealing to everyone will never work and results in the rise of Skywalker.
Oh god. No! No!
Those good old times simply never were. And that's because people, by nature, look back and only remember the good things. That's what nostalgia is. And if Doomsday's written well, they'll address that, diving into the very psychology of nostalgia and our devastating need for it. And I could bring up how a lot of close-minded MCU fans want to go back to simpler times that were supposedly great, but as pointed out in pretty much every one of my videos covering Marvel's failed multiverse, the MCU has always been the same, consisting of some hits, some misses, and some straight up duds, but always delivering when it mattered. Sure, their latest duds have been more memorable, with Quantumania squandering their overarching Kang storyline, forcing them to reassess everything, Love and Thunder wasting Thor's God Butcher and Mighty Thor arcs, and Secret Invasion being what it was. And depending on who you are, because I did end up enjoying pretty much everything else, the list goes on, all of which I can, and likely will in the future, make hour-long video essays delving into exactly what went wrong and what they could have done differently. But no matter what, that doesn't change how I wish Doomsday's focal characters weren't who the teasers are hinting at. I made sure to state it up top, and I'll restate it every chance I get, because I trust the Russos to allow each and every character a moment in the spotlight. Yet this narrative should center around Reed, Sam and Shuri. I know it's been a little chaotic post-Endgame, and narrowing down the multiverse saga's key players is about as clear as mud. I even thought about including Thor or Kamala, but keeping it to 3, maybe even having them lead each separate team is essential for simplicity's sake. And who knows, maybe the movie reveals 20 minutes in that Steve Rogers isn't important to the overall narrative. After all, I am just speculating, but that much needed focus on Reed, Sam, and Shuri will instead be scattered to maybe a version of Tony, Steve, Thor, the new Avengers, and Fox's X-Men. And for those first few, I understand. Ignoring Norton's Incredible Hulk, these 3 were the first heroes Marvel introduced in Phase 1, so of course they're gonna be key players in Endgame's final battle. For a solid decade, they were the MCU guys. But that shouldn't be the case now. Not only has their time passed, with their storylines either wrapped up or given some kind of emotional send-off, except for Thor, who is the only one even in the multiverse saga. And I hate to say it, but him having a new kid to take care of just isn't that interesting, with the best and most obvious narrative to do there having Doom kidnap her, like he's seemingly doing with Franklin. And it does suck that so far, Thor's adopted daughter is the only thing post-Endgame that affects the story. Everything else is a direct sequel to Endgame, or another story entirely.
And I know that is very extreme. Optimistically, there will still be focus on MCU characters.
But stay with me here. It's not about whether they were always planned to show up, because every single one of these guys likely were, from the very beginning, going to make an appearance. Similar to Deadpool and Wolverine's extended cameo group, popping up to say hello, doing some action, then stepping out of the way, with the actual characters driving Doomsday's story forward being mismatched teams of the Fantastic Four, the new Avengers, Sam's team, and the Young Avengers. But thanks to Doomsday's obsession with nostalgia, that has, at least in the marketing, flipped, with the central focus being given to what should have always been the cameo roles. Roles that maybe should have been a surprise for the movie. Again, I have no doubt Steve Rogers was always going to make an appearance. I mean, the Russos clearly want to use him, but more than that, it's the Multiverse Saga's Avengers movies. Everyone and their mom is going to show up. Will the Eternals? Or Secret Invasion's Gaia? Maybe. I want the Eternals too, because I'm one of the 10 people who likes it despite its flaws, and want a Judgment Day sequel, but Gaia and everything that happened in Secret Invasion should be ignored. Yet I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Doomsday's writers did find a way to slot her in, because, just to say it again for those in the back that didn't hear, it's the Multiverse Saga's Avengers movies. Everyone will at least show up. I'm just concerned whatever their original plan was has been contorted into something so unrecognizable. The only thing going for it is its honey-trapping nostalgia bait, and I won't harp on all the problems I have with how they were going to make Kang Dynasty, then got cold feet and decided leaving us MCU fans in limbo, unsure of whether Jonathan Majors' Kang would be recast or thrown to the side, was the best option. Though out of everything, writing Kang out of this movie is fairly simple. Just have Doom show up to the Council of Kangs at the beginning, and with a flick of his finger, wipe them all out. Is that lazy? Yeah. But it also sets up Doom as a legitimate threat within the context of storylines already set up by Marvel, so I wouldn't be mad at it. In fact, that all brings me to the fact that we also have to consider the very likely reality that no matter what, Doomsday and Secret Wars will at the very least be fun. I would like a one-to-one retelling of Hickman's Secret Wars, because that comic and just about anything Hickman touches is that good. Just use that comic as a blueprint and it's a recipe for success. But almost no comic or even novel adaptation is ever one-to-one, so we can't expect that. Plus, Marvel movies have always been their comic stories in name only. So with that being said, what can we expect? Well, if it's Marvel writers doing what they do best, odds are that means the story will be about some messed up people coming together to do the right thing. That and one similarity to Infinity War that I'll get to. But for now, let's talk about Marvel and their oddballs. And there's plenty of exceptions to this rule, such as Sam, who I find interesting, but some claim is less engrossing because he's such a square. But especially recently, The Thunderbolts was easily my favorite Marvel movie of the past year, just because without relying on cheap nostalgic tricks, it really was a return to form for them, giving its audience real, genuine stakes, heartfelt themes, and most importantly, characters we all fell in love with. Because that's what the MCU has always done best. Even doing it with a ridiculous cosmic team that has a tree and a raccoon in it, though that has more to do with the gun never missing. But the MCU even started out like that, giving us an Iron Man that most, on first glance, assumed was a robot of some kind. Except he wasn't. He was an arms dealer, profiting off of war and death and laughing about it. Yet somehow, Jon Favreau and Iron Man's many writers, without a solid script mind you, made Iron Man likable and subsequently a household name, setting the standard for what's to come. For a brash and immature man-child to finally step up and do the right thing, all the while diving into their traumatic issues with lighthearted surroundings to keep everything fun and easy going, which are ideas that can absolutely work in Doomsday. It doesn't have to be action figures clacking against each other for 2 hours, though even I'd still manage to have fun with that. But with everything that's been shown in the marketing, legitimate or in leaks, clacking action figures for nostalgia does seem to fit what Doomsday is going for. So first up on the docket, let's talk about Steve Rogers, who, before I ever saw 2025 Superman, was the poster child for how I wanted Clark Kent to act, being their universe's bedrock for everything moral and just, where they themselves don't necessarily go through an arc changing over time. Instead, inspiring institutional change around them, also they can fix their world's misguided status quo. And as Steve Rogers returns, advertised and discussed by the Russos as important, I suppose I can see some ways that can work. Not blending with everything as well as I'd like, but work nonetheless. Because when I think of Steve Rogers, there is one line that always floats to the surface first. That being Ultron's dig at him, how he's God's righteous man who believed he could live without a war.
God's righteous man, pretending you could live without a war.
Because he never stopped fighting, which tells me he truly can't exist without a bully or battle to overcome. We can even call it his fatal flaw. And a genuinely interesting place to start would be seeing how Steve is holding up. He's got a kid, and from everything I've learned about parenting, that is a hell of its own kind. But how's he doing without the next big fight to plan for? Is he bored? Finally happy? I honestly couldn't tell you, and that ambiguity excites me. Of course, Steve also needs to say, "I'm not Cap, he is," while pointing at Sam, just for all the bigots to shut up. I mean, I can't argue with some legitimate criticisms against Sam's Captain America, but I blame the behind-the-scenes mishandling of that character, not anyone else. And I address a lot of Sam's narrative issues in this video of mine, Rewriting Brave New World. But at the end of the day, he's the new Captain America, and therefore should have been the rock that every Avenger turns to, which is why that should have been what Brave New World was about. But again, just watch this if you want to know my full thoughts on Sam's wasted potential. Yet that doesn't mean the MCU should throw him to the side and just use the more popular old model. If you couldn't tell, like some disappointed dad, I just want them to A, stick by the decisions they've made, and B, to make better decisions. Come on, you chose to give Sam the shield, then made a whole show about him learning to accept that role. So do something with that. Take it further than just restating the same themes in their next movie appearance. But I've yet to even talk about the characters being introduced in Doomsday. The X-Men, who in the vast multiverse could be anyone, but for peak nostalgia kinda have to be Fox's team. And then Doom. But let's talk about the X-Men first, because I've been awfully negative so far, despite promising to cover my hopes. But man, that third teaser hit. I know some of you probably haven't even seen it, and the version I did see was extremely poor quality, but to that I say, it's out there. Go watch it. Finding it might be difficult at this point, but covering up any leak is like pissing in an ocean and trying to get it out. It just ain't happening.
Wow, so I guess the one bad thing about taking forever to get these videos out is the X-Men trailer is also out. So you can see it right now, and I can use these crisp, high-quality clips instead of the 480p screenshots I was planning on using. Anyway, let's get back to your regularly scheduled programming.
But with that trailer and what it tells us, I have to say I am exceedingly, but still hesitantly, excited. Mainly just because of how it depicts something new, showing some kind of Days of Future Past dystopic future, down to a sentinel stomping around in the background of that final shot that, strap in, I'm about to spend way too long talking about, because I suppose those legs don't have to be a sentinel, and could be anything, but taking that theory and running with it, if the X-Men are fighting, seemingly losing to some sentinels, then that means their timeline is not a good one. Of course, earlier I mentioned how they have to be Fox's X-Men for peak nostalgia, but who even are these guys? We know that Logan's timeline has a whole team of dead X-Men, killed by Professor X's unbridled seizure-induced psychic blasts. And then there's this Wolverine's timeline from Deadpool and Wolverine, who also has a whole team of dead X-Men to mourn. Hell, fractured dystopic X-Men teams are a dime a dozen in the multiverse. But to draw in the biggest crowd, we'll probably be told that these guys are the X-Men we watched more than 20 years ago. Will it make sense? Not really, but Fox's jumbled X-Men timeline has never made sense. I suppose they could always just say that this is the Days of Future Past timeline, taking place after their happily ever after. It would suck for them to fight as hard as they did for that, battling weird power-shifting sentinels from the future and 30-foot-tall 60s ones, and then for skyscraper-sized comic-accurate sentinels to pull up and destroy everything. But it makes sense to me, if only to decrease the amount of X-Men showing up, and to explain why we're seeing a run-down, outwardly abandoned X-Mansion. Plus, it gives credibility as to why Magneto and Professor X have apparently teamed up again. It would be cool to see the Brotherhood of Mutants and the X-Men team up as well, but the less characters, the better. All in all, we know we're getting Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler, Kelsey Grammer's Beast, Rebecca Romijn's Mystique, Patrick Stewart's Professor X, Ian McKellen's Magneto, James Marsden's Cyclops, and interestingly, Channing Tatum's Gambit, who I mention with the rest because I could see them just slotting him in and saying he's the Gambit we would have gotten if these movies kept going, making them the final survivors of their X-team. How does that all connect to Doom's storyline and his desire for a perfect utopia? I don't know. But on the hero side, I'm guessing Monica is stuck here with the rest of the X-Men. But what about everything else? Is Doom sending out the Sentinels? Is Cyclops crashing out in a prologue to their story, and the actual narrative takes place flashed forward? I have no clue, because I'm too focused on all that Cyclops love. And putting aside the incredible PR team he must have, I just love how he's getting the attention he deserves. Seriously, is it just me, or are the devilishly handsome, stickler for the rules, square in charge getting more and more popular? Just me? Oh. But for real, Cyclops' next level optic blast is truly a sight to see, where the crackling energy behind it can tangibly be felt. And I see you already typing up that comment. I know, it's not a hot laser blast. But I'd rather they depict it with sizzling and sputtering uncontrollable energy than an unimaginative solid red beam. To be fair, his powers are always depicted effectively, even in his first appearance back in 2000, but I'm optimistic that the Russos, along with the other filmmakers working on this, will put thought and effort into depicting Cyclops' devastating powers in new, fun ways. along with everyone else for that matter. In fact, seeing that is what first made me think that the Russos' depiction of superpowers in all of Doomsday could have some extraordinary filmmaking. Because, small but important side tangent, the cinematography and color grading of all three of these teasers has been incredible, giving credence to the internet chatter that Doomsday could potentially be the best looking MCU movie ever. I know that's hyperbolic, but hey, I'm just putting it out there. I'm talking genuine blocking and lighting, plus filmmaking with special effects in mind, rather than using them as a crutch. And we've only seen snippets of snippets so far, so that could all be incorrect, but I'm willing to bet, just thanks to the hate the Russos specifically have gotten over their bland cinematography, they're actually trying here. But staying on the X-Men for a little longer, if I'm honest, and sadly getting back to some negatives, I figured after Secret Wars, the next saga would be about introducing MCU mutants, giving us a new recast, young and hip X-Men team. And that still can happen, but first, in Doomsday, we're getting the Fox X-Men back, which is fine. Fun even. Again, it's the multiverse saga Avengers movies. Any cameo that can happen will happen. But it is slightly weird that Deadpool and Wolverine's farewell edit in its credits now doesn't feel as final. And neither does Patrick Stewart's reappearances with diminishing returns. Though I do like him with a red X this time. But because of all that, I was fully against Fox's X-Men coming back. But after I saw that trailer, the gears started to turn on how brilliant their return could be. I am skeptical that Doomsday is still gonna attempt some kind of finalization of X-Men's early 2000s storylines, drawing much needed focus away from the MCU stuff that I'm at least interested in, and I still think it would have been truly jaw-dropping to see them as cameos and be surprised by them, but in this economy, that was never going to be the case. Yet in the same way I trust the Russos to give every single person a moment to shine, I trust the Russos to go all out on the X-Men, and therefore I'm undeniably excited to see them again, despite the inherent confusion that comes with. Plus, Feige worked as a producer for a lot of those Fox X-Men movies, so I guess there's enough behind-the-scenes connections to justify their return without it seeming like a complete cash grab. Nonetheless, if you haven't noticed, I have yet to discuss the most important element of all, because it's finally time to cover the last topic of this video, Doom himself. And like Thanos in Infinity War, I have a good feeling Doom will be the main character, following his journey as he's forced to swat away Avengers and X-Men out of his way like gnats. And there are certain Hickman story beats that would be a wasted opportunity to not do, such as Doctor Strange working for the greater good and becoming Doom's right-hand man. Maybe even bringing in an army of Thors from around the multiverse that Doom uses as his militia, and have Jane or Thor try to get to the bottom of it. Deadpool can even magically get his looks back and have that extorted over him, possibly by Doom. And I especially assume we're getting all of these universes fighting each other for survival, at least at first. And an Illuminati-esque group getting together to pompously decide who lives. But the main thing that I need to see, potentially in Doomsday's inevitable cliffhanger ending, or in Secret Wars, would be Doom forcibly turning Johnny into the sun that gives his utopia warmth, and the ground they walk on being Ben, transformed into the planet itself. All playing into how unstoppable and inescapable Doom is, given powers thanks to magic, technology, and straight up theft, but has reached the level of God Emperor Doom, this cosmically unbeatable force, thanks to him siphoning power from a bunch of different batteries across the multiverse, that being Franklin Richards, Love, or Thrud, or whatever we're calling her, America Chavez, and whoever else they can use as a narrative MacGuffin to simplify the story, used in place of Molecule Man, Doom's power bank in the original Secret Wars arc. Well, not the original Secret Wars, that was in the 80s, but you get what I mean. Hickman's Secret Wars. Yet Doom as a character is so intriguing simply because he is fundamentally steeped in vanity and hypocrisy. And I just talked about how including Fox's X-Men could overcomplicate and draw focus from the MCU storylines that should be given more importance, but Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom is going to do that times 1,000. And I've already complained about how in the world and why Victor Von Doom has Tony Stark's face, but I also know that Downey's gonna kill it. As much as I would like some unknown, vaguely Eastern European actor to play him, though I was also pushing for Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, Jaime Lannister, or Mads Mikkelsen to play Doom, and they're both barely European enough, but at least they're better than Robert Downey Jr. But I am more than fine with him, because I'm banking on Downey's face only being seen for a cold open of some kind so Victor can get his horrible scar, and we can see him being vain, choosing to seal his face under a metal mask. I mean, Marvel went through all the trouble of casting Robert Downey Jr., so I imagine there's going to be a lot more of seeing his face throughout, but that's just my best case scenario, with Robert Downey Jr. having to exude a physical performance with his mannerisms and voice. But I have faith whatever they do will be more than fine, and it's especially Doom's look that I'm more than confident will be done justice. It's just the writing I'm most skeptical about, because, in the end, as long as it's to people who have pledged undying fealty to him, Doom's a great leader, prioritizing his people's safety above all else, especially in times of strife, but also caring about their happiness and well-being, though I think that has more to do with him viewing his followers as pets, and him wanting to take care of his pets. But most importantly, that reciprocal love and adoration needs to be displayed. Without it, Doom's just not that interesting. So if done right, it could fuel an inner conflict that works in tandem with the Avengers. But to wrap up, I want to take a look at two overlooked lines from Marvel's past, both of which, funnily enough, happen to come from Age of Ultron, a movie that, for whatever reason, I have been referencing a lot in this video. Regardless, a hard line that I constantly think about is Ultron's, "You want to save the world, but you don't want it to change."
You want to protect the world, but you don't want it to change.
A complex theme that can finally be dived into, with Doom wanting to save a collapsing or just maddeningly chaotic multiverse by shaping it into his perfect utopia, which could work hand in hand with the next line I'd like to guide the themes of Doomsday, that being when Cap is giving a depressing pep talk before the third act, and says, "Ultron thinks we're what's wrong with the world. It's not about beating him, it's about whether he's right."
Ultron thinks we're monsters, that we're what's wrong with the world. This isn't just about beating him. It's about whether he's right.
If those two ideas alone are hammered home in Doomsday, with relevant context used to flesh out each and every member of Doomsday's extended cast, then regardless of an over-reliance on nostalgia, we might have a winner on our hands. Do you agree? Think I'm way off my rocker? Drop a comment with your thoughts. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.